Hi friends! I am so glad that you're here. I'm eager to get started on the Elate Quilt Along. I feel like the stars are aligning because my newest fabric collection, Memento, is showing up in stores as we speak. This makes me so happy. I was really hoping to position this quilt along to coincide with when you could get my newest fabrics in your hands, so I'm glad that it's actually working out. As for the fabric, like I said, it's hitting shops as we speak. Keep an eye on your local shop if you know that they've ordered it or if they stock Ruby Star Society and Moda fabrics. If you don't know where to buy the fabric, I have been getting a lot of questions about that. I'm doing my best to repost and share the shops that are tagging me on Instagram, so you can check out my social media. If nothing else, you can also do a Google search for Memento fabrics by me, and I know some things will come up. So back to the Elate Quilt Along. I am really glad to have you here. For the next 6 weeks, I'll be sharing about my Elate projects. I hope that you'll join me in making an Elate quilt yourself, but don't be stressed. Even though the quilt along has a set schedule, you can take it all at your own pace. You can find the schedule for the quilt along on my blog. Everything is linked in the description below. The general idea is that I will be posting each week on my blog. I might also have some videos that I will share here on YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed. But everything will be linked in the blog. If you would like to subscribe to my newsletter, it will keep you updated there as well. For this quilt along, we do have some prizes, which is exciting. That always makes things more fun. Some of the prizes will be from me and some will be from Ruby Star Society. To enter to win, make sure you are following both of us on Instagram. You can tag both of us in your post, and you can also use the hashtag ElateQAL for quilt along. You can also enter to win by asking me a question. So each week I'll answer some questions. The link for that is in the description below. The details and there's also a digital button that you can post. Those are on my blog as well. This week I'll be talking about previous versions of Elate that I have already made. We will address some of your questions. Thank you to those of you who have started asking them. And I'll share with some of you what I'm thinking about and inspired to make during this quilt along. The Elate pattern is a simple idea, but that doesn't mean that it is boring. I've been a little obsessed, which should be evident by the fact that I have already made 4 of these Elate quilts so far. And even with that, I'm excited to make another version in this quilt along. Let's look at what I've made so far. Looking at quilts is always a great way to get ideas of different directions that you can go. This first one is made using the entire Memento Fat Quarter bundle. It's featured on the pattern cover and it is the large size. The pattern outlines a few different ways to make this project. You can work with scraps of fabric, you can work with fat quarters, or you can work with yardage. You could also work from a mixture of these, which is likely what I will be doing. I'd say that the fabric and color approach in this version is to explore my new fabric collection. I love a project that allows you to play with fabric combinations, and usually when I have a fabric line coming out, there is a project where I'm doing that. I like to see how things can mix and match and discovering different pairings with the fabrics. So since I worked from the Fat Quarter bundle, there was some planning around which blocks would be used for which style. But once I sorted that out, I could mix and match within the styles. You'll see in this quilt along that I like to start cutting strips and making blocks before figuring out the overall picture. With this one, I knew the overall fabrics that I was using. I was working with the bundle. And I started with one pairing at a time that I'd cut out some pieces, sew them together to make a block before laying them out on the floor. Of course, you could use your design wall if you have one. I just usually like laying things out on the floor. And this is where it all ended up. I sometimes like to group colors together to create areas that feel very connected. I like how you can emphasize or de-emphasize the geometry based on your fabric choices and where they land. Different blocks using the same fabrics can be placed together for more continuity, or they can be separated in order to create a different dynamic across the entire quilt. My next version is a 2-color quilt that uses 2 fabrics from Memento. There is a darker blue and a lighter blue. And I love a 2-color quilt, but I have to admit that I don't always have the self-restraint for it. But here I was determined, and I'm really happy to have this one to show you. 2-color quilts can be very dramatic. They can emphasize geometry, they can have a lot of contrast, or they can have very little contrast. You can pick wildly different colors, or you can pick colors that are in the same family, like I did here. For me, it is just really hard to pick only 2 fabrics. That is the hardest part. Even within the Memento collection, there are many 2-color combinations that I think would work great for this project. What I ended up with, I think, is lovely. The variety of shapes play tricks on your eyes. It's clearly a grid, but it is constantly changing. I didn't want the repetition to feel predictable, so I played with my block layout to enhance the variety. Another direction that you could consider would be to lay your blocks out in a very regular pattern. I mean, that would look so different. The third option was actually the first quilt that I made when I was playing around with this idea. This version is Scrappy, and I love a Scrappy project so much. There's nothing better than the variety and the surprises. With this one, I rated fabrics that were already on my cutting table as well as my fabric stash. I don't know about you, but my fabric stash can feel very precious sometimes. So I gave myself permission to dive into it and use the fabrics that felt right and brought me joy. There is an overall color vibe to this project. It's a lot of blues and greens. I can't say that I planned to go in a specific color direction, but instead I moved with intuition. I know that color can feel overwhelming, especially when it comes to a scrappy, anything can go type of project like this one. Don't let yourself feel overwhelmed. I think that's the main tip. Look at the fabrics that you have on hand and gravitate towards what's tugging at your heart the most. Start with one fabric, find something to pair it with, and then go from there. Don't overthink it. Just start sewing and know that each pair isn't going to make as much of a difference as the collective result of all of your choices. In fact, there is a weird block in this quilt. There are actually probably several weird blocks in this quilt if I really look, but in the center there is a block with a red and white grid fabric with one of my fabrics. And if you look at it, it doesn't, I don't think it matches anything else. It was one of those blocks made from fabrics within arm's reach, and I didn't put much thought into it. It was made very early on, but as I got to the end, as things grew, I knew that it kind of didn't fit and I could take it out, but it also doesn't matter. I like that it's a little bit off, and I don't think that you really notice it until I point it out. There's just so much variety going on, and I don't know, it kind of works. But what do you think? Did this block jump out at you when you first saw it? The fourth quilt is one that I haven't shared yet. It was made as a wedding present for some family members. The inspiration came from the color of the invitation. I also knew that they had a garden floral wedding theme going on. So with that, I pulled fabrics in the exact green that was on the invitation. It was sort of a not super saturated, but like sagey green. And I expanded that by going with darker and lighter greens that were in that family. And then I also took the liberty of adding a bit of the warmer greens. I hope they don't mind that, because I don't know, I felt like it was needed, and I like it in there. They really pop. There are also some floral fabrics that felt right. Like I said, it was a garden floral themed wedding, so that seemed to fit in. There are also some yarn dyed wovens and several pieces from my previous fabric collections. So as with the other versions that I've made, I didn't want the grid or blocks to feel super regular and predictable. I achieved this by pulling my fabrics, picking the first few pairs, sewing the blocks, laying them out, and then making an assessment before cutting more and making more blocks. So it's this kind of back and forth that I really enjoy doing with this project. I haven't talked about the quilting with any of these, and I think I'll save that for a future post, but just notice here how nice the very regular quilting pairs with the design. I just love how this one turned out. So those are the versions I've made so far. I'd love to know what you think about them. Feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know which one is your favorite, which one you'd make changes with, what you'd add to another one. I have a little bit of housekeeping before we move on. It was recently brought to my attention that we have an error in the first edition of this pattern. If you purchased a PDF, that has been updated, so you can log onto your account and download the latest version, which has a number 2 in the title. It's just for the second version. As for those of you with the print copy, you can go to the blog post and there will be an update that you can download there or look at. The corrections have to do with the extra large size only. All other sizes are correct. Some of the block quantities were not correct in the extra large size. This doesn't affect the size of the pieces or even the layout diagram. It mainly just affects some of the quantities. So I am really sorry about this. I will say that we take great care with producing and editing my patterns, but we are humans that are doing it, and sometimes things slip by. So download the correction and let me know if you have any further questions. Let's talk about fabric. I hope that seeing the versions that I've already made have gotten your creative wheels turning. There is no pressure to reinvent the wheel either. I feel like some people have opinions about all work needs to be original, and I don't believe that. If you like a combination that I put together, then by all means have at it. Take inspiration, use it. I think that we all come to quilting with different interests and strengths, and if picking fabrics isn't your jam or if it feels overwhelming, then take inspiration from what I'm showing you. Also, I should say that my fabric collections are designed with the idea that you can mix and match as you wish. I try very hard to put together a range of colors that can work well together in all different scenarios. It is my goal to set you up for success. And if you're wanting more of a palette to pull from, you can also look at the coordinating basics that I have chosen to go with the collection. Now that I am with Ruby Star Society, I can pick a palette of their speckled and starry basics to complement the collection. As for me, I am drawing inspiration for this quilt along from my studio, and specifically from tidying up my studio. Don't get the wrong idea, it is still a mess, but I don't know if you ever discover new things when you decide to clean up your space. Well, that happened to me months ago when I was conceptualizing this quilt along. I couldn't help but see pockets of inspiration in the stacks that are around my studio. There is a pile of Liberty that I accumulated at QuiltCon in February. It is so dreamy. I know that it would make a lovely Elate quilt. There is also this random pile of things that were pulled for that final Elate quilt, and then some other things I don't really know. They were just different projects. But in shuffling these piles around and when they came together, I just thought they looked really good. And finally, there's also this pile of solids from another clean out. Of course, there are more than just reds here, but the reds and oranges look, I don't know, I just feel like they look really good. And I'd love a mixed up monochromatic project. I think that some of my orangey Memento fabrics will look really good with these too. So these are just some of my fabric thoughts as we get started. Let me know what's jumping around at you in your world. Now, let's get to your questions. As I mentioned, I have a question form that you can use to ask me a question. Asking a question does act as an entry to win a prize, but make sure to leave your email address in the form. The submissions are kept private, so you don't have to worry about your contact information getting out. It just allows me to contact you in the event that you win a prize. First question. Where do I sign up for the quilt along? There's no official sign up for the quilt along, but if you'd like to be eligible to win a prize, you can ask a question, as I just mentioned, or you can tag me on Instagram. You have to be following me and Ruby Star Society as well, but we'll be selecting winners from the question pile and from those of you who have tagged me. To follow the quilt along, look for new blog posts every Thursday until September 24th, 2026. Second question. I bought the pattern, where do I buy the fabrics? I mentioned this earlier, but my newest collection, Memento, is hitting stores as we speak. I'm doing my best to share and repost shops as they tag me, so you can follow me on Instagram as I do that, or you can search on Google. I know there are several shops selling the fabric online if you cannot find it locally. Thank you for asking. Next question. Should I decide to do the 2-color version, how much fabric of each do I need? The pattern will tell you this, so if you have a print copy, it's on the back, and if you have the PDF, it is on page 2. Listed under blocks are 2 different fabric amounts. The top amount is how many fat quarters you need if you are using fat quarters. The bottom amount is the overall yardage. So this will help you estimate what you need if you are using anything else. With this amount, you'll need it in 2 fabrics if you're doing the 2-color quilt, and it is noted there, but great question. Another question is there a coloring sheet for this pattern? I'm going to use a large group of fabrics and would like to lay it out on paper. I love this question. We all like to plan our projects in different ways. Unfortunately, I do not have an official coloring sheet that goes with this pattern. It just didn't fit in, but you can use the existing diagrams as a coloring page, and I will tell you how. One of my favorite supplies from architecture school was a roll of trace. It's basically a roll of tracing paper that you roll out, sketch on. Tracing paper is perfect here. Just lay it out over your designs. In the back, there are the project layouts, and then you can explore those options with markers and colored pencils. I'll leave some links below for products that I like to use. Will you talk about how to choose fabrics for this quilt? I am hoping that I already answered this and how I described the versions that I've already made, but let me know if you have any further questions about it. Finally, I have a question that came up a few times over the weekend. I had an event at my local quilt shop, and several people mentioned the fear of having points match up in a project. And To be honest, I don't think of points matching when I think of Elate, but it actually does have them. So I'm really grateful that folks were pointing this out to me as a concern. What I have to say about that is that fabric choice makes a big difference. Some fabrics are forgiving and some fabrics are less forgiving. If you were to use only solid fabrics for this quilt, the points would be pretty prominent, but color and value do make a difference. If you were to pick solid fabrics that are close in value or color, there would not be as much of a distinction at the point. On the other hand, printed fabrics can be your friend. Think back to my Scrappy version of Elate. There is so much going on in that quilt. So number one, are you noticing the points? There's a lot to look at, and I don't think the points are the first thing that you notice. Number two, some of the fabrics that I used in that project have a very large scale or dominant print that they look like they could be blocks themselves. And I love printed fabric that can confuse you and confuse what you're singing. This is a great thing to keep in mind because you can use it to your advantage. If you are worried about being perfect with your points, then you can carefully consider your fabric options. Or you can also not worry about it too much. With each quilt we get better, so consider each of these seams as practice and progress in the right direction. I'll make sure to share tips as we start piecing things together, but basically I love using pins and I also love a good press. That's it for this week. I love you guys and I am excited to quilt along with you.